The summer air in Milwaukee was thick and humid on July 22, 1991. Tracy Edwards, a 32-year-old man, had no idea that his night would turn into a desperate fight for survival. He had agreed to go with a man he had just met, one who seemed friendly enough, offering drinks and conversation, but what he didn't know was that he had just walked into the lair of a monster. As the apartment door clicked shut behind him, Edwards felt something was off. The smell was overwhelming, a pungent, rotting stench that clung to the air. The walls were adorned with strange posters, and a large blue barrel sat ominously in the corner. Before he could process it all, his new acquaintance, Jeffrey Dahmer, locked the door and pulled out a pair of handcuffs. Tracy's heart pounded as he stared into the lifeless eyes of a man later known as the Milwaukee Cannibal. Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer had spent years perfecting his method of luring young men to his apartment, where he would drug, strangle, and dismember them. His fascination with control and death was chilling. His victims, often vulnerable young men, were chosen carefully. He had learned to hide in plain sight, deceiving law enforcement and even his own neighbors. The horror of his crimes had continued unabated for over a decade. Dahmer had managed to evade suspicion despite multiple close calls with the police. But that night, Tracy Edwards would change everything. Edwards quickly realized he had to play along. He laughed at Dahmer's jokes, complied when ordered to sit on the grimy mattress, and remained calm as Dahmer pressed a knife to his chest. But the fear in his gut was undeniable. The killer was distracted, mumbling about his need for company, lamenting his loneliness. When he turned to watch a movie, Tracy saw his chance. With all the strength he could muster, Edwards swung his fist at Dahmer's face and bolted for the door. The apartment was a maze of horrors, but he didn't stop to look. His only focus was getting out. Out in the street, barefoot and handcuffed, Edwards ran until he spotted a pair of police officers. Gasping for breath, he pleaded for help, leading them back to Dahmer's apartment. What they found inside was the stuff of nightmares. When the officers stepped into the apartment, they were immediately assaulted by the revolting stench. But it wasn't just the smell that sent shivers down their spines, it was what they found. A severed human head in the refrigerator, photographs of dismembered bodies scattered across the floor, human skulls, carefully arranged like trophies. Dahmer was eerily calm as he was placed in handcuffs. He even attempted to explain, his voice disturbingly casual. "I should be dead for what I've done." But the nightmare was only beginning to unfold. Over the next several days, Dahmer confessed to a killing spree that spanned over a decade. His victims, 17 in total, had all suffered unimaginable fates. The more details he provided, the more the world recoiled in horror. He spoke of his need to create zombie-like companions, injecting acid into his victims' brains while they were still alive. He described his experiments with preservation, his consumption of human flesh, and his eerie detachment from it all. Yet even in the face of such evil, there were questions. How had he managed to escape justice for so long? And more disturbingly, how many times had he been close to being caught? As the investigation deepened, shocking revelations emerged. Police had, on multiple occasions, been within reach of stopping Dahmer. In one tragic instance, 14-year-old Konorak Syntha had escaped, only to be returned to Dahmer's custody by the very officers sworn to protect him. The police, believing it was a simple domestic dispute, left the boy in Dahmer's care. Hours later, he was dead. The public outrage was immense. The failures of law enforcement, combined with Dahmer's ability to manipulate those around him, had allowed the horror to continue far longer than it should have. When Dahmer finally faced justice in 1992, the world watched. His trial was swift. He pled guilty but insane to 15 of the murders. Despite his attempts to explain his actions, there was no redemption, no sympathy. He was sentenced to 957 years in prison, ensuring he would never see freedom again. Yet even behind bars his name carried fear. Other inmates viewed him with disgust. He was not a man to be respected, but a monster to be reviled. And in the end, it was not the justice system that delivered his final punishment. On November 28, 1994, Dahmer was attacked in prison by fellow inmate Christopher Scarver. Beaten to death with a metal bar, Dahmer's reign of terror was brought to a violent, fitting end. Some called it karma, others called it justice. Either way, the Milwaukee cannibal was no more. Decades later, the case of Jeffrey Dahmer remains one of the most disturbing in true crime history. His name is synonymous with evil, his crimes a reminder of the darkness that can hide in plain sight. But amidst the horror, one truth remains clear. It was the courage of one man, Tracy Edwards, that finally put an end to the terror. If you found this story gripping, make sure to subscribe for more chilling true crime cases. There are many more untold stories waiting to be uncovered. Stories of survival, justice, and the relentless pursuit of the truth. Subscribe now and never miss a story.